Hey, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to the Susquehanna River Basin Commission's Public Water Supplier Assistance Program webinar, an introduction to funding opportunities for New York public water supply projects. My name is Dave Hackler. I'm a member of the Commission's Project Review Program, and I coordinate outreach events for the Commission's Public Water Supply Assistance Program, a program that was created in 2012 to provide technical assistance to Susquehanna River Basin public water suppliers and their consultants. I'm excited to facilitate today's webinar, which is a collaboration with state and federal agencies to discuss the types of available water infrastructure funding for drinking water related projects and associated technical assistance. There's currently millions of dollars available to be tapped by public water suppliers, and we're glad you could join us to learn more. A few of the participation and interaction housekeeping items. This presentation is being recorded. Our goal is to post this webinar on the Commission's website at www.srbc.gov. We also plan to email each of the attendees a copy of today's presentation. It's highly encouraged that you guys ask any questions or comments you have. We have the right people in the building to hopefully answer your questions. There's a QA box available for any of your questions. It's at the bottom of the page. You'll see the little icon with the Q&A. I ask that there's an anonymous option, so if you wish to remain anonymous when you submit your question, you can check that box. And then at the end of today's presentation, we plan to conclude with a question and answer session. With Zoom, there's also the ability for our presenters to answer your questions. So I do ask that any of our presenters, if they see a question come in specific to their presentation, go ahead, you can answer it, and then we'll kind of do a recap at the end. Our webinar has three main objectives today. The first objective is to share the broader spectrum of available funding programs. So we'll identify available grant and loan programs at a higher level, how they apply to drinking water related projects. We'll touch on opportunities for suppliers for those finances to meet their near and long-term system improvements. For the second objective today, we're going to share strategies to identify and secure funding. We understand that not all funding options will work for your public water system, and it can be difficult to navigate the steps necessary to secure various loans and grants. We'll share that information to ensure you pursue the options that are best fit for your project priorities, your staff capacities, and make sure they adhere to federal, state, and local rules. The final objective today is to provide a direct line of communication. We're hopeful that you'll receive information directly from agency staff who review these applications and issue financing, including those who offer technical assistance. Our goal today is to allow you to put the faces to the names, identify agency contacts, and learn where to access additional information. To meet our objectives today, I'm happy to be joined by multiple state and federal organizations. We have EPA Region 2 Water Division. We have New York State Department of Health along with New York State's Environmental Facilities Corporation. They work jointly to review these applications, so you'll hear from both of them together here shortly. We have the United States Department of Agriculture, their Rural Development Program. Happy also to be joined by EPA's Water Infrastructure Finance Innovation Act Program, also known as WIFIA. And then we'll conclude today's session with Syracuse University Environmental Finance Center, where we'll get to learn about some of the technical assistance being offered. The list of our agencies that you see on this slide is actually going to follow our presenters today. So I'd like to turn today's presentation over to Winnie Zhao of the EPA Water Division to discuss more about PWS loans and grants, the bill funding, as well as state revolving fund work.
All right, thank you, Dave, and good afternoon, everyone. Can we advance to the next slide? I see it loading, so we'll give that a minute. But while we wait for that, I'll just introduce myself again. My name is Winnie Zhao. I'm in the State Revolving Fund program with, and also the Water Technical Assistance Liaison. So I work with both the State Revolving Funds and technical assistance here at EPA Region 2. So I want to thank you all again for being here today and giving me this opportunity to speak with you about the different water opportunities that EPA offers. Next slide, please. So here is just a quick agenda of kind of the various programs that I'll be speaking with you about. I'll start off with the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, or the DWSRF, for those who are a little more familiar with the acronym, as well as the set-asides that are part of the program. We also have the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law that's also kind of tied with the SRF program. I'm going to go into the technical assistance, the water technical assistance specifically. And we also have the Emerging Contaminants Small and Disadvantaged Communities Grant, as well as the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation, or the WIN Act grants, and the Public Water System Supervision PWSS grant program. Next slide. Okay, so for the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund program, this is, or just the SRF in general, this is an area that my team works very closely on, and it's to provide SRS funding to the states to help fund community projects related to water infrastructure. So the funding is annually allotted from Congress, and we provide the funds through EPA to the states for their selected list of projects on their intended use plans, or IUPs. The states will get into more of their details a little later. And we also have the Clean Water State Revolving Fund, which is also part of the State Revolving Fund program, and that's a funding source for wastewater infrastructure project. Additionally, what's unique about the DWSRF is the set-asides that are part of it. So under the Safe Drinking Water Act, states can set aside up to 31% of their DWSRF capitalization funds and use it for state or third-party programs to drinking water systems to provide assistance and use for capacity building to ensure delivery of safe drinking water. And these set-aside funds can help support non-infrastructure-based programs. In addition to the DWSRF and the set-asides, we also have the investments from the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law, also known as BILL. The EPA can provide additional fundings for the three following pots of. So that includes the general supplemental, which is additional funding that's added onto the capitalization funding that states get annually. We have the emerging contaminants funds, which are used for emerging contaminants like PFAS and PFOA in the emerging contaminant projects in the water. And lead service line replacements, which are used for removing lead lines. And note that the lead service line replacement funding is only for drinking water projects. And while we get the capitalization grants for the Drinking Water State Revolving Funds annually, for the bill funding, we only have it from 2022 to 2026. Next slide, please. Okay, so I'm going to take a step back and just sort of break it down a little bit about the different roles that we have in the SRF program. So in EPA, our role is to award the funds that are appropriated by Congress to each of the states and to provide grant terms and conditions, in addition to guidance and also program oversight of the program. And then we have the states. So here we have, for New York specifically, we have Department of Health and the Environmental Facilities Corporation, who administers the SRF program within the state. They are the ones who would review the application for projects, and then they would rank and prioritize to create a list of eligible projects in the intended use plans and determine the financing packages that would be offered to these eligible entities. And lastly, we also have a community role, which is a chance for the public to provide feedback on the IUP through the public comment process. Next slide, please. Moving forward, I'm going to talk about the water technical assistance that EPA has, where we partner with different TA providers to discuss the application, to assist with applications or anything of that sort, to assist with applying for water funding. One of them is the Environmental Finance Centers, or the EFCs. They were created to assist communities, specifically small and disadvantaged communities, to access SRF fund and bill funding. There's a total of 29 different EFCs nationwide. And here in Region 2, we'll be working with Syracuse University to provide some technical assistance, and you'll hear from Syracuse a little later. In addition to the FCs, we also have some technical assistance and resources available through EPA's Water TA website. So we actually have an intake form. So it's like a quick questionnaire that's about under 5 minutes that anyone publicly can access and request TA for any communities. And that we also have a quick fact sheet as well that lists the type of TA, all the various TA opportunities that we have or the services that we can offer, and you can find more information on the link below. Please note that the TA process does not guarantee funding, but it's a way to provide first-time applicants or underserved communities the support they may need to tap into this funding. As we know, there's a lot of funding available, but we want to also make sure that it is offered equitably across the board. Next slide, please. Oh, I think we gonna go forward. Yep, there we go. And here's just a chart of all the services that's under the technical assistance program that we can offer. So it can be assistance with planning and assessment, project development, partnerships and engagement, funding and financing, or program management support. So this is just a quick overview of all the different types of TA. And yeah, next slide. So additionally, we also have other funding sources. So I'll start off with the BIL, Emerging Contaminants Small and Disadvantaged Communities Grant. This grant is for public water systems in small and or disadvantaged communities to address emerging contaminants in their water. So it's a little bit different than the one that is just EC, Emerging Contaminants under the BIL, because it's focused on small and disadvantaged communities. We also have the Water Infrastructure Improvements for the Nation, or WIN Act grants. So there are 3 of them. So the first is the WIN 2104, which is for small, underserved, and disadvantaged communities. It's to provide funding to states, territories, and tribes to assist public water systems in meeting the Safe Drinking Water Act requirements. And then we have the WIN 2105, which is for reducing lead in drinking water in disadvantaged communities and schools. This grant, along with funding from the BIL funds, will help make rapid progress on the goal of addressing lead and removing lead pipes across the country. And we also have the WIN 2107 for voluntary school and child care lead testing and reduction. So this grant provides funding for voluntary testing for lead contaminations in drinking water at schools and child care facilities. It also provides funding for lead remediation. Please note that the SDC and the WIN grants are first awarded to the states to be awarded to individual projects, similar to how the SRF and the BIL funds are also administered. Next slide, please. Okay. And one other additional funding resource or funding opportunity is the Public Water System Supervision, or PWSS grant program. This program is to help states, territories, and tribes carry out their PWSS programs. The purpose of it is to enforce requirements of the Safe Drinking Water Act and to ensure water systems are in compliance with the national primary drinking water regulations. Next slide. So here I know there's a lot of text, but this is just a quick overview of the different types of activities that are eligible and can be performed under the PWSS program. So it varies from activities that include the development and maintenance of inventory of public water systems in the states, as well as creating a database to hold compliance information on these public water systems. Funding can also be used to conduct sanitary surveys and to review public water system plans, and to also provide technical assistance to managers and operators of the public water systems, and a few others, as you can see on this list. And next slide. And lastly, I'm just going to conclude with a slide of some additional pieces of information, links and resources available, as well as my contact information. If you have any additional questions, feel free to reach out to me after this webinar. And I know I threw a lot of information at you guys with a lot of different acronyms, so don't feel the need to have to get it all down at the moment. But if there's any questions, please feel free to reach out, and I will conclude my presentation here. Thank you so much. And I'll turn it back over to Dave.
Yeah, thank you so much, Winnie. If you have any questions for Winnie, I'd ask that you please put them in our Q&A box. I'd also like to provide a reminder that you guys can type any questions or comments in the QA box at any point throughout this presentation. Up next, we're going to have Monica King from the Bureau of Water Supply Protection with the New York State Department of Health, as well as Rebecca Walker, a Senior Finance Manager for the New York State Environmental Facilities Corporation. So with that, I'd like to give control over to Monica, and feel free to advance your next slide.
All right. Thanks, David. I didn't have anything come up, so saying to have control. Perfect. Maybe just my keyboard works now. All right.
Hi, everyone.
Start?
Yeah, my name is Rebecca Walker. That's Monica King, not also Rebecca Walker. We had some technical problems there that you're seeing. So our agenda for today, I'm gonna start with a very brief introduction of the funding programs we have available here at EFC. I'm then going to turn the presentation over to Monica, who will be able to give you a more technical overview of these programs, including the SRF and bill programs, our 2 state grant programs, WIA and IMG. And then lastly, she'll end with a few details about funding program requirements and how to apply for funding. I'm not sure who has control of the slides. There we go. So here at EFC, our mission is to help communities throughout the state undertake critical water quality infrastructure projects by providing access to low-cost capital, grants, and expert technical assistance. We have 4 different funding buckets there. Our drinking water projects, they are funded through the Drinking Water State Revolving Fund, sewer and wastewater treatment projects through the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. We also have various state grant programs, WIA and IMG that I had just mentioned, and then the new bill funding, which is administered also through the SRFs. New York leads the nation when it comes to municipal infrastructure project funding. To date, we have provided almost $9 billion to drinking water projects, close to $36 billion for wastewater projects, and approximately $2 billion through EFC water grants.
All right, next I'm going to take you guys through the funding, different sorts of funding that Rebecca just went over in a little bit more detail, starting with our state revolving funds. For those that might not be aware, the New York State Revolving Fund is how we distribute annual US EPA grants. They are used to capitalize SRF programs along with state matching funds. And the SRF loans actually revolve. So as funds, as shown here in this display, as funds are loaned to communities each year, the principal is repaid annually and recycles back into the SRF program to fund new water quality protection projects. So there's repayments coming in, there's seed money from the EPA, and also New York State participates, and then there's bond sale proceeds, and those are what trickle through and allow us to do the low-cost funding and bond repayments. So what are eligible projects for the DW SRF? There's a lot, really. There's so many things drinking water related, from whether it's source improvements, at your wells or your intakes, all the way to anything within the water treatment plant, so treatment options, disinfection, and also out into water storage tanks and the distribution system, pump stations, and water main. It's probably easier to go over what's not eligible. So what's not eligible for DWSRF money would be projects that have the primary purpose is economic growth, or if the primary purpose is fire protection. So those are not eligible for DWSRF funds. But we'd like to note that DWSRF funds can now go towards the rehabilitation of dams and reservoirs, where such work supports the public health protection objectives and complies with the class exception that was approved by the US EPA back in July of 2021. For a long time, we used to tell people that there was no dam or reservoir work was eligible, but now certain ones might be. So next I'll move on to the bipartisan infrastructure law funds that Winnie had highlighted on, otherwise known as Bill. So Bill and DWSRF, they're going to work hand in hand. Bill is being administered through the state revolving fund. So over the next 5 years, there's additional requirements though with the bill money. There's add sub or additional subsidy percentages that are required for each of the separate pots of money. So Winnie had highlighted that there's a bill general supplemental pot of money, that there's a bill emerging contaminant pot of money. There's also the bill lead service line replacement pot of money. Each of them have their own requirements when it comes to additional subsidy. Additional subsidy, or sometimes called add sub, is kind of like another word for grant money. That's how it should be seen, and that's how we treat it. It's money that is required. You get it in via if you get a bill award, and it does not need to be paid back. So for the bill general supplemental, there's an additional subsidy or add sub requirement of at least 49%. For the bill emerging contaminants, there's an add sub requirement of 100%. And then for the bill lead service line replacement, there's an add sub requirement of 49%. So for those that might be questioning, well, if you are required, if we're required to give you 49% in add sum, where does the rest of the money come from? And that can vary. You could take it and you could cover the remaining amount with DWSRF loan. You might be able to get a WIA grant, which I'll talk about more later in this presentation. It can also be covered by municipal contribution. So we see it vary for different projects. So eligible projects for each of those separate pots of bill money. Bill general supplemental, that's probably has the most range of what we can cover with that pot of money. You can see there's a bunch of things listed on this slide here. So whether it is rehabilitation work, upgrading of a water treatment plant, transmission mains, distribution mains, storage facilities, pump stations, there's all sorts of ways that we can try to utilize that funds. The other two pots are a little bit more narrow in what they can cover. The bill emerging contaminant or EC money is only available for projects whose primary purpose is to address emerging contaminants. So in drinking water, and there's a focus on PFAS for that funding. The bill lead service line replacement money, those projects are to replace or investigate lead service lines. And they need to be connected to a project that's either to identify, plan, design, or replace lead service lines. It's important to note that for that bill LSR money, that any project funded under that category involving the replacement of lead service lines must replace the entire lead service line, not just the publicly owned portion. It needs to be the entire lead service line. And next, I'm going to touch upon our WIA grants, so our water infrastructure improvement grants. We just recently, if you're familiar with the state grant programs administered through the EFC, then you might already know that we recently had WIA grant applications for WIA Round 8 due. So that due date has passed, but I'd still like to talk to you about these state grants because they're a great opportunity for a lot of municipalities out there. So let's go over some project examples for the WIA grants. WIA grants can be used to cover construction, upgrade, replacement of water infrastructure. They can address non-compliance issues, whether that be federal or state. Construction of new drinking water infrastructure to replace private wells. It can also be used for emerging contaminants. So it just is important to note for the WIA that you have to meet certain criteria. Has to result in the construction of a project. So we can't fund just studies or investigations. It must not have started or completed construction before certain programmatic dates that vary each WIA round. And also includes, your project has to include the applicable EFC terms and conditions in all of your contracts that are paid with that funding. So move on to who's eligible to apply for WIA. There's lots of people eligible, whether you're a county, city, town, village, district corporation, a school district, an Indian tribe, public benefit corporation, or public authority. All of you are, if you fall into one of those categories, you're eligible to apply for WIA. So important to note for WIA is that WIA can cover up to 60% of your net eligible costs. So municipalities will be awarded 60% of the net eligible costs, including costs for all phases up to $5 million. The maximum a municipality can receive is $5 million in DWSRF grant and/or WIA grant per year. And also projects addressing an emergent contaminant above the state MCL may be awarded 60% of total net eligible costs with no cap. So a $5 million cap does not apply in those situations. You might be wondering, how do we evaluate the application that we get for a WIA? So the slide here goes over what gets looked at as part of the WIA project evaluation process. As we go through those applications, water quality improvement and reduction in risk to public health is considered. Financial need of the community is looked at. Readiness to advance to construction, how ready your project is considered when it comes to the WIA grants. So doing things that show that you're committed to the project. For example, sometimes we see projects that have already completed seeker. They might have already gone through the architecture and engineering attainment process. So they have an engineer, working with them already. If the water district formation is required, they might have already formulated that water district so that it really shows that there's a demonstrated community support for that project. These things are all considered when it comes to how we score the WIA applications. We also look at impacts to disadvantaged communities and potential environmental justice areas. And next, let's talk about our intermunicipal grants, otherwise known as IMG grants. Intermunicipal grants require that more than one municipality undertaking a capital improvement project are doing it jointly. So examples of this could be shared water quality infrastructure projects. Let's say if we have 3 municipalities and they each have a 1 million gallon tank, if they got together and potentially built one $3 million gallon, 3 million gallon tank, that could be a great IMG project, right? Because that way you're not maintaining 3 tanks, you're only maintaining 1, and they're sharing the benefit of just having 1 tank. It's kind of a win-win for the municipalities, and it's a win-win from a regulatory standpoint because there's not 3 tanks to be keeping track of and making sure that it's being maintained. It's now only 1 tank. So other examples could be a consolidation of intermunicipal facilities, like a regional facility, and the interconnection of multiple municipal water systems. It's important to note for the IMG that funding is available for both drinking water and clean water projects. In order to apply for the IMG and attain that funding, there needs to be a current, valid, and binding intermunicipal agreement between at least 2 cooperating municipalities related to the financing and implementation of the project. For the IMG grants, 1 municipality, though, will take the lead and be the lead municipality, and they will apply on behalf of all the cooperating municipalities. So here's a quick slide on IMG grant overview. Municipalities will be awarded 40% of the total net project costs up to $30 million. 1 municipality must be the lead. Municipalities may apply for this grant on more than 1 project. And the last bullet point that got cut off, each municipality is limited to receiving no more than 10 million allocation per year. Now, when I say net eligible cost, not everyone understands what that means. So this slide is to give you a quick example. Let's say you had $10 million in total eligible project costs, but you got some other funding that was worth $400,000. other funding sources or other awarded grants or any other, like that would actually be subtracted. And so your 40% IMG grant award would be based on 9.6 million, not on the 10. So that's where it would come to that $3.84 million max grant eligible. Okay, now let's highlight some funding program requirements. The base program for DWSRF has the following requirements. They are federal requirements that that we have to check and enforce as the program, as the project progresses. The American Iron and Steel, and all of this is outlined in the terms and conditions, which is why it's so important that the EFC's terms and conditions gets added to every contract, because it actually explains all of these. The American Iron and Steel or AIS requirement, the MWBE requirement, the Davis-Bacon wage rates come into play. So all the spec books for projects that utilize DWSRF should not only have the New York State wage rates, but should also have the proper Davis-Bacon wage rates, and whichever is higher is what gets paid. And also professional AE service procurement that is recently changed, and there's a great guidance document on the New York State EFC's website. So I'd encourage everyone to Google New York State EFC AE service procurement guidelines, because there's a great document and it's worth reading, because in light of some of the requirements for the bill money, EFC put out this great guidance on making sure everyone is following the proper procedures to get engineers and architects on board to assist them with their projects. Now, the bill funding also has additional federal requirements for if you get awarded bill general supplemental, bill EC, or bill lead service line. You also need to be then aware of BABA, which is the Build America, Buy America Act. This expands the, it's kind of like AI, we always had the AIS requirements for American Iron and Steel, but it takes it even further, and it adds additional requirements. So there's also the telecom exclusion, which prohibits some specific telecom equipment. Disadvantaged business enterprise, that's a federal regulation. Also, there's the single audit and federal grants threshold. So your audit requirements change with that bill money. There's additional coordination for environmental review. You end up doing more of a NEPA review than the state seeker review. And also, it's important to note that the federal equivalency requirements are not necessary for any project funded through a bill with a population less than 10,000. So you'll notice there's lots of areas where that bill money tries to really help our disadvantaged communities and our environmental justice, or EJ areas. So required steps, like how do you, now I'd mentioned that the architecture and engineering procurement has changed. This is slides based on the guidance that the EFC put together. It just gives you an overview of now what's required as part of the AE procurement process. There needs to be a public announcement. There needs to be an evaluation and ranking, discussion with at least 3 engineering or architectural firms. There's a selection of at least 3 firms, and there's a contract negotiation process. And like I said, if you go to the EFC's website, there's a great document put together that details all of these steps in much more detail. Now let's talk about applying for funding, right? Everyone wants to know, how do we get this funding? So to apply, we don't think it's difficult. Some people think it's difficult, so I'll go over it with you. And if anyone should have any questions, you can definitely reach out after. But the first step is to list your project. So listing your project, we have a listing due date for the DWSRF side that is always in June. And so that date has passed this year, but we got a whole bunch of new listing forms. And then once we receive those listing forms, the projects are ranked and they're given a score. And then a draft IUP is released. We're actually in the draft IUP period right now. So if anyone wanted to read that and make comments on it, you can up to the end of the month. The draft IUP is released, and then it's finalized and the IUP is released. And then you would gather your application materials. Those are outlined on our website. And the EFC's website as to exactly what's required as part of an application. And you would submit that application and the materials when you apply for financing. So applications are accepted. We just actually had, as I mentioned, there were deadlines for that. We got a whole bunch in, so we're super busy. And so this is a nice slide just showing you a quick outline of how you apply. And so David had asked us to give you some pointers on what we would suggest as kind of tips for how to apply. So this slide was put together to give you guys an idea of, in the ideal world, we would see all these things happen, right? They would see that you contact the DOH and the EFC staff early, discuss your project. You'd submit the listing forms and applications as early as possible. Submit engineering reports early, because then you could actually get, some feedback from your local health department and the state DOH about your project, whether we think it's feasible, whether you think it's your best options. Procure engineering services according to the new federal requirements. Identify and apply for all required permits as soon as possible. Contact New York State DEC Regional Permit Administration. And that's important, just because you don't want to, nothing worse than giving you money and then have it, oops, it seems like I just lost my screen. Oh, so I'm not going to be able to advance the slides I'm rolling. Uh-oh, my screen just go. So can you guys still hear me?
Hey, Monica. Yes, we can. Would you like me to advance your slide?
Yes, I would. I think I only had one more after this one, so I'll go over my last bullet points, but it was initiate your district formation. If you can make sure that that's already done, it just shows that you have community buy-in, involve your local council and bond council, and then involve municipal representatives. That was all we had. Hopefully I stayed within your time frame.
Yeah, thank you very much, Rebecca and Monica. So at this point, I'd ask if you have any follow-up questions for Monica or Rebecca. Again, New York State Department of Health and the Environmental Facilities Corporation. I'd ask that you add those questions in right now. Up next, we're going to transition to Brenda Smith, Community Programs Director for the Rural Development Program with the USDA.
Good afternoon, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can, Brenda.
Okay, I didn't get a pop-up to take the slides though, David.
You should have enabled slide control. Can you please try to advance?
No, it's there. Oh, did you do that or did I do that?
You did that.
Okay, it worked then. Okay.
Great.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Brenda Smith. I'm the Community Programs Director for USDA Rural Development. Just want to go over some programs we have available for under USDA for financing. As you can see, the first slide here, we've got the map of New York State. We have 10 area offices. Our Syracuse office is our state office. And then we have 10 area offices across the state that you would work directly with on your application when you were filing your application. For ours, under water and environmental programs, we can do drinking water, we can do sewer, solid waste, stormwater, and that includes any construction, repairs, any modifications. If you need to do an expansion or do improvements to the project, we can pretty much finance anything that you would need for your project on your drinking water or sewer project. We do a lot of drinking water. We don't do a lot of solid waste, do a few stormwater every once in a while, and then we do some sewer projects in there too. Funding can be used for your construction costs, purchasing existing facilities, legal fees, any soft costs that you have that need to be financed, all of your technical services costs, your engineering fees, anything that you need to pay for permits, any equipment you need to purchase, all of that is included in the financing for the project. To be eligible, the applicant must be a public body, a not-for-profit organization, or a Native American tribe, federally or state reservation, or other federally recognized tribe. One of the things with obviously rural development is you must be in a rural area. So you must be in a town, city, village that serves a population of 10,000 or less. You have to be able to show too that you can afford to finance the project from your own resources or through commercial credit at reasonable rates and terms. And you must have the legal capacity to borrow funds and repay the loans. And if you're an existing USDA, you have to be able to show that you are sustainable, that your existing facility is sustainable. For the direct terms, the New York State law, public bodies, we mainly work with public bodies for USDA 40-year term under local finance law. We finance the project for a 38-year term because the 2 years, typically it's a 2-year construction period. You're out on a ban during that 2 years to construct the project, and the final term ends up being a 38-year term with USDA. The applicant is responsible for the short-term financing or the construction financing. We don't provide financing during construction. So you're going to be out on a ban during the construction period, and after you finish the project, you've exceeded our loan amount, we would then close on the loan to finish the project. So ours is permanent financing, but you're going to be out on a ban during your construction time. Interest rates are changing effective 10/1. Currently, the poverty interest rate is 2.125. The estimated rate effective 10/1 is going to be 2.375 for poverty. Intermediate rate is currently 2.875, and that is estimated to go up to 3.125. Market rate is currently 3.625, and the estimated rate that they're telling us right now is 3.875. Our rates change quarterly, so these are the estimated rates for October 1st. Also one thing that's changing for USDA is we are changing October 1st to the 2021 5-year average median household income. And we're changing to the 2020 population starting October 1st. So you'll see that in order to qualify for the poverty rate, your 2021 median household income must be less than $58,620. And you must have a documented health and sanitary issue that is going to be addressed by the project. And that would qualify for the poverty rate. For the intermediate rate, that's going to be any project that doesn't have a health and sanitary issue. And the MHI is between 58,620 and 53,275. Market rate is any income that is above the 73,275. And for the market rate, there's no grant funding available for the market rate. So these are all new rates that are changing for us effective 10/1. Loans must be adequately secured. New York State, since the majority of the projects that we finance are public bodies, we do require general obligation bonds. If you didn't have the capacity to do the general obligation bond, then the other option would be a revenue bond or assignment of income. But we pretty much everything we do is going to be GO bonds in New York State. We do have grant funding available. It is a small portion of our allocation. We get about 70% loan, 30% grant. And the grant is used to try to bring the user cost down to a reasonable level. Our national office has determined 1.5% of your median household income is a reasonable level. If we can get to that, most projects we are not able to even get that low just because of the cost of the projects. Typically, you'll see between 1.5 to 2%. Sometimes it may be even above 2%, depending on how much the project is. We do have a WEP guaranteed loan program. I did throw this slide in here. We do not use the guaranteed program a lot in New York State, only because public bodies, there is an IRS ruling that if you're doing a tax exempt issuance of a bond, you cannot have a guarantee on that tax exempt issuance. This program is available to, probably more so for not-for-profits that might have a system, but the difference in this program is the bank gives you the loan and the population limit is 50,000, and we guarantee any loss to the lender. We have the Emergency Community Water Assistance Grant, or ECWAG. This is again for communities, same type of community. It's got to be a public body, not for profit. Indian tribe, 10,000 or less population. And this basically is to allow you to make repairs due to a natural disaster, whether something happened, there's an emergency that happened, could be a flood, tornado, something came in and caused issues, and could be a drought, could be a chemical spill, but something affect the water supply. If you have to make repairs, the grant can be up to $150,000. If you need a new source, the limit on that is $1 million. There is a streamlined application process if you do not need additional funding from rural development other than just the ECWAG. We have planning grants. We have two different planning grants. We have the pre-development planning grant, and we have the special evaluation assistance for rural communities, search grants and PPGs. Again, these are the same eligible applicants, got to be in a population of less than 10,000. And this is for you to be able to complete your engineering report. So obviously when we file an application, you need to submit your engineering report. So these funds can be used to complete your engineering report, to complete your environmental report that's required with the application. Eligible areas, towns, cities, villages, less than 10,000 for the PPG program. The limits are going to go up to 58,620 effective, that's the 2021 MHI. Right now, they're currently 45,506, but effective 10/1, that will increase to 58,620. The maximum grant is 30,000 or 75% of the total development cost, the pre-development cost. The search program, that is for rural communities, 2,500 or less is the population limit on that one. And again, it's the same median household income. The difference on this one is the 2,500 or less population, and the maximum grant is 30,000, or it could go up to 100% of the development cost. All of our applications are done via online. We have an RD Apply system, and everything is done completely online. You go in, you fill out the screens, and then you submit the application, and then we receive it here and we process it. I just threw this slide in here just in case anybody was interested in that. We have the Community Facilities Program, which also we can pretty much finance anything that a rural community might need that's essential to them. We do have the Build America, Buy American requirement that is required now on all of our infrastructure projects. So when you're working on a project, your technical consultant wants to make sure that they take that into consideration when you are working on the project. We do have customer guides that's available. If you're interested in that, we can certainly share that with you or your consultant. This is just a quick overview of what we did last year. We spent $83 million on the loan side for WEP, $27.8 million in the grant side. And then we did 4 search and PPGs and 2 ECWAGs. And then we have a special pot of money for just Tioga, Sullivan County and the town of Warsing with it's a special REAP set aside grant, which we did fund a project for 4.4 on the grant side on that one. So that's just a quick overview of what we did last year. This year will probably be similar to what we did last year. Our allocation is around 30 million a year on the loan side, and around 9 or 10 million on the grant side. So that's just a quick overview of the main programs we have on the water and waste side. And there's my contact information if anybody has any questions.
Yeah, thank you, Brenda. If you have any questions for Brenda, please add them to our Q&A box. And then up next, I'd like to introduce Dallas Shatzuk, the Senior Program Manager of the WIFIA program.
Perfect. Thank you. Hi, everyone. My name is Dallas Shatzuk. I work with the WIFIA program at EPA. So to kick things off, what is the WIFIA program? We are a government bank at US EPA, and we provide low-cost loans to a variety of entities for their drinking water, wastewater, and stormwater projects. Our mission is to provide long-term financing to borrowers for projects that are important to them, benefit the environment, and that are going to save money for ratepayers. Quickly to cover some of the high-level program features of WIFIA. We have a minimum project size of $20 million for what we call our large projects. And for those projects, we can fund up to 49% of their eligible project costs. So if a community comes in with a $20 million project and they're a large community, we could fund up to just under $10 million of their project costs. If you are a small community, which under the WIFIA program is a population of 25,000 or less, that minimum project size drops down to $5 million, and we can fund up to 80% of your project. So if you come in with a $5 million project, we could fund up to $4 million for you. For loan terms, we can do up to 35 years after substantial completion of the project. So that's not when the loan is signed, that's when construction is complete. That's when that 35-year time frame would start. We can also defer repayment for up to 5 years after substantial completion. That gives communities time to set their water rates or get whatever their repayment stream is set up and to start paying off some of their existing debt. The interest rate, it will be equal to the treasury rate on the day of closing. Currently, that's like 4.25%. I'm going to talk more about eligibilities on the next slide. Just know it's a wide range of water infrastructure projects. And because we are a federal funder, the federal requirements do apply. It's the ones that you've already heard: NEPA, Davis-Bacon, AIS, BABA, and among some of like the other more traditional requirements. So for eligibility, I'll start with who is eligible. We can really fund a wide variety of entities. We can do public entities like local governments, tribal governments, private entities like corporations and trusts. We funded public-private partnership projects. We can even provide funding directly to the state revolving fund programs to kind of supplement the money that they're giving out to communities instead of going out to the bond market. In terms of what we can fund, a variety of drinking water, wastewater, stormwater projects, pretty much anything that you can think of. A lot of the things that have already been discussed in earlier presentations. A lot of our projects are for addressing like climate change impacts like drought or flooding, aging infrastructure, addressing regulatory compliance, and improving water quality. And in terms of activities that we can fund, it spans, at the beginning from like project planning and the design step, through construction and some of those related costs that you might have, like land acquisition or some of your financing related costs. In terms of some of our like benefits of loans, I'm not going to go over all of these, but I wanted you to have them for when you have the slides later. So for interest rate, again, that interest rate is going to be locked in on the day of closing. You don't accrue interest until you start drawing down on the loan, which is a benefit for a lot of our borrowers who don't draw down on their loans until midway close to the end of project completion. And your credit rating is not going to impact your interest rate, which is a big benefit for some of our borrowers. They get a much better interest rate than they would on the market. In terms of the loan terms, we do a lot of sculpted repayment schedules for borrowers. You can do the traditional mortgage style where you pay like the same amount every 6 months, but a lot of our borrowers will defer payments, do interest only payments, then do principal and interest payments. And our underwriters work with each borrower to kind of customize that to their needs and what their existing debt is. We can finance a combination of projects under one loan. So that's something to keep in mind. And then in terms of like loan management, you can request disbursements up as frequently as once a month. We process your disbursements within 15 days of request. We currently have a 100% success rate in that target. So the loan process, I'm not going to go through all of these in a ton of detail. Just so you know, there's like 3 initial steps. Project selection, that's kind of the first step where you would submit what we call a letter of interest. It's just enough information for us to know what the project is, who the borrower is it eligible, is it technically feasible, and can you pay us back? Are you creditworthy? If you satisfy that, then you would move to the application stage. You submit an application, move to negotiations and loan closing. But once the loan is closed, still a lot of work that has to happen. And so that's what project monitoring is. That's like post loan closing, where you would have like a dedicated portfolio management team that would work with you, answer your questions. You would submit your reports to them. They might do site visits at certain intervals of your project, and they would be your go-to person for anything that you needed post loan closing. So like I mentioned earlier, we are essentially a government bank, and because of that, we have money available year round. We say that we're open year round. So whenever borrowers are ready to come to us, submit their letters of interest or submit their applications, they can do so, whatever meets their schedule. And this just kind of helps us to be able to provide funding year round and, you know, fund a wide diversity of projects. And so because we are open year round, you can submit your letters of interest at any time. So again, year round access to the funding. You get quicker decisions from us at EPA than when we were in that more competitive environment a few years ago. Some of our borrowers will time submitting their WIFIA documentation with like cycles of other funding sources like the SRFs or maybe USDA or Bureau of Reclamation. And it's really easy to submit one. So if you have questions or you need access to the SharePoint site where it goes, you can just send us an email and we will get that taken care of. In addition to doing events like this, we always are open to meeting with prospective borrowers who want to talk about their project. They have specific questions, or they are just starting their projects and looking to talk to a lot of the different funders to see what might be a good fit for them. We are always happy to do that. You can, again, just email us and we will get something set up with you. Just so you have these, I'm not going to go over these, but there's links in here for all of like the main resources on our WIFIA page that would be of interest. And with that, I will just say thank you. I'm currently sick. My toddler's got me sick, so thank you for bearing with me as I'm losing my voice. Again, our website, if you have questions, email us, wifia@epa.gov. And this link in the middle of the page, the tiny URL, you can sign up for our newsletter. We send that out once or twice a month with some of our like bigger updates. And I think that is it for me. So I will turn it back over to Dave.
Yeah, thank you so much, Dallas. If you have any questions about the WIFIA program, please enter any of your questions or comments in the Q&A box. We're going to then proceed to our final presenter today. It's Tess Clark, the Assistant Director of Water Resilience at Syracuse University. They also have an Environmental Finance Center, so she'll be discussing some technical assistance that they offer.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dave. I hope everyone can hear me. Here we go. Okay. Oh, I went too far ahead. Sorry about that. So thank you so much for the introduction. For those of you who aren't familiar with Syracuse University EFC, our bread and butter is really digging into that how to pay problem of environmental protection and improvement. We've been supporting communities with technical assistance and training for almost 30 years now, including the research side, understanding why it happens and how different funding and financing options can be leveraged together to create a funding quilt. And we're really excited for the opportunity to discuss some of the expanded technical assistance services that we're launching in collaboration with EPA, as well as a host of other national and regional partners. And Winnie alluded to this technical assistance and actually discussed it, not just alluded, but discussed it in her section. And I really appreciate that. And it gives me the chance to really be a cheerleader for this type of work that we haven't really had the chance to do as in-depth as we do now. So what's our goal? Our goal is to make the water infrastructure funding process more accessible, especially for those smaller communities that haven't had the opportunity or the capacity to really dig in and apply. And we're looking mostly at state revolving loan funds, but we can really look at encompassing funding opportunities across the BIL. We're not alone in this. There are a lot of other TA providers out there, and EPA is standing up new centers, specifically looking at environmental justice. So we're committed to finding the right fit for communities across all of these options for technical assistance. If you are a little confused by what might work for you in terms of TA, don't hesitate to reach out, because here at Syracuse, we're happy to be that link. And if we can't help you, we will find the right person who can. We've never turned anyone away. On the right side here, you can see our region. Just to keep in mind that we're not just looking at New York, we also serve communities in New Jersey, Puerto Rico, and the Virgin Islands. If you know anyone, feel free to send them our way. And collaboration is key to delivering this assistance effectively. So we're prepared to work across stakeholders, regional groups, your organization, and the various agencies to keep everybody looped in. And here you can see our coalition of partners on our water TA team. We're excited to have Cornell University Water Resources Institute co-leading this effort with us. We also have Moonshot Missions, RCAP Solutions, which some of you may be familiar with, and also Quantified Ventures, which is a firm that specializes in state revolving loan funds and a handful of other financing options. So it's really a fantastic team. Our role is to help get all of these partners into to deploy them into working with communities. So it's not just us, it's an entire coalition of folks. So what is it we can actually do to support communities? How can we help? We offer a full range of services that are available at no cost to communities in our region. They're intended to support at any stage of the project development process. I won't read these topics off the slides individually. I will say that the takeaway here is that we'll match you with the expert on our team that can best fit your need, whether it's evaluating, your data and your needs and making plans, or if you're ready to apply and you just don't have the capacity to get that application in, we also have, that's where we can bring in firms like Quantified Ventures to really help get over that last burden or circumvent that barrier. I'll get on my soapbox just for a second to say that this chart doesn't do a great job talking about the light touch assistance. We are really creative about how we can support communities. So if you have a need for, say, students to help you digitize records or something that will help you get to that place where you're able to apply for funding, or you're able to think a little bit more broadly about your infrastructure project, those are also things we can help with. I've worked with communities to do simple things like digitize records or rotate PDFs before. We're really here to lend you a hand, and we like to stay with you every step of the way. Okay, next, how can you get assistance? There's several pathways to assistance. Winnie already mentioned one of them. You can request assistance from providers directly. My website is listed here, efc.syr.edu/assistance. You can also reach out to me directly. EPA has also launched a form that they manage. So if you were to use this form that EPA has, a contractor would then put you in touch with the right provider for you at that time. It could be us or it could be someone else. And then there's also a way to get assistance just by the back end, where we're working with states to directly identify communities, and we'll be doing some direct outreach to communities that might be a good fit as well. In any case, don't hesitate to reach out. Even if you're not totally sure, we don't want to waste anyone's time, so we'll find the right fit for you. And like I said, we haven't turned anyone away. And I'm going pretty fast, and I hope that's okay, Dave. I'm trying to get to the juicy question and answer bit. So the last thing that I have for you is my contact information. Whoops. Give me a call, feel free to send me an email. And like I said, we're excited to bring some of these expanded services to bear. So thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Tess. So with that, that'll conclude the presentation portion of today's collaboration. I'd ask that you have any questions specific to Tess or any of our other presenters, that you please enter them in our question and answer box. It appears we don't have any questions at this time. The beauty of this is we will be providing this information for your reference, and we hope that you found it helpful. So again, I'd like to thank all participants for joining us today, our panelists for sharing this information. I'd also like to point to our Public Water Supply Assistance Program. Again, we provide technical assistance for public water suppliers, and we offer webinars and workshops annually. So yeah, thank you everyone, and I hope you have a great rest of your day.